Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I am Desi L. Campbell, and I am thrilled to have this opportunity to explore a pivotal moment in African American history with you today. As we uncover the tale of Jenny and Joe McLean, it is essential to grasp the intricate impact of slavery, which empowered African Americans to transcend adversity. Join us as we immerse ourselves in the touching narrative of Jenny's ancestors and their descendants, reflecting on their journey and honoring the resilience of our forefathers.
The tale of the McLean and McNeil ancestors unfolds in Ibom, Ohafia, Nigeria, millennia ago. Situated in Igbo land, this region has been of home to the Igbo people for generations. Ibom, Ohafia lies within the state of Abia, one of 5 states comprising Igbo land. Our ancestors resided in Abia in the early 1700s, living in small farming villages, striving for sustenance. Despite the hardships, they found joy in communal gatherings, feasting on staples like yams, beans, and rice, while preserving Igbo traditions passed down through generations. During this era, neighboring villages often clashed in wars, resulting in the capture of prisoners. These captives were then sold by town authorities to European traders, namely the Portuguese and British, who initiated the global slave trade involving the Igbo people and other African tribes. Unfortunately, almost all of their genealogy is verbal, and much of it was lost with the transatlantic slave trade. It's incredible to discover through DNA that you have Igbo ancestry, connecting you to the descendants of Joe and Jenny McLean. Their story, rooted in the Igbo tribe's history, sheds light on the harrowing journey of enslaved Africans from capture to arrival in Virginia around 1775. Jenny McLean's parents, likely captured while working in the fields, endured unimaginable hardships as they were transported to the Cave Temple complex in Arachukwu, Nigeria. From there, they were forced onto brutal slave ships, enduring cramped and unsanitary conditions during the 6 to 8 week journey to Virginia. The Igbo tribe, historically significant in the Richmond area of Virginia, faced tremendous suffering and loss during this period. Jenny's own account on the 1880 census of Harnett County, North Carolina, further emphasizes the enduring legacy of Igbo ancestry and the resilience of those who survived the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade. She states that she was born in Virginia and her parents were born in Africa. Jenny's parents' resilience endured beyond the treacherous ocean voyage, as they faced further dehumanization upon arrival in Virginia. Their journey included the degrading experience of being auctioned off on the auction block, subjected to scrutiny and sold to the highest bidder. The fate of their unity remains unknown, whether they remained together or were tragically separated, never to reunite. Despite the challenges, Jenny was born in the Chesapeake Bay area of Virginia around 1785, likely in Richmond, adding another layer to the complex narrative of survival and adaptation in the face of adversity. When Jenny was around 8 years old, she and her parents experienced another harrowing journey. During the 1700s, there was a high demand for slaves in the expanding southern regions, particularly for tasks like cotton and tobacco cultivation and tar production from pine trees. Virginia was a major hub for slave trading, where traders would gather groups of slaves, sometimes numbering as many as 100. These slaves were then transported while shackled or tied together, walking in rows of up to 50, with traders on horseback wielding whips to prevent rebellion and maintain pace. This method, known as a coffle, was commonplace in Virginia and other southern states. Eyewitness accounts of this cruelty were often documented in journals. Jenny and her parents endured this grueling journey, walking approximately 215 miles in extreme heat to Fayetteville, North Carolina, a stop on the way to slave markets in Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi.
I'd like to talk a little bit today about doing Black research. I've been doing it for going on 9 years now, and found it quite challenging, as you can imagine. But quite rewarding also. I grew up as a white girl in Utah and have always been interested in genealogy, but 8 years ago, decided to do an ancestry DNA test and found out that I had African American blood, which was quite a shock, as you can imagine. So I started delving into how that could be possible. Black history is very difficult because slaves were not named unless they were named in a will of the enslaver. At the time of his death, he would have divided his property up and given his property to his siblings, brothers and sisters, his wife, so on and so forth. So that's always a good place to look. Doing Black research is amazing and very unbelievable, actually, especially as a white Caucasian woman. To find out that I have Black ancestry was shocking. It was amazing. It was thrilling. There was mixed emotions from people in the family, but everybody was open to it. And you need to realize when you do DNA or when you do genealogical research that you are going to find things that you may not be so comfortable with, but you have to have an open heart and an open mind and realize that this is what it is. We are all brothers and sisters. We are all cousins. We are all related. We all came from the same places or different places and worked together and meshed together. And we just need to be open to that and to help each other to find our families and find where we belong, because it gives you such a sense of belonging and purpose. And I mean, to this day, every day I think about it. If I'm outside or if I'm in nature or if I'm in the house doing something, I'm like, I wonder what our ancestors did, or I wonder how they did this. And if it weren't for them, I would not be sitting here today and I would not be talking to you. So embrace it. Open your heart, open your mind. If there's miracle stories like mine that I was able to find my Black ancestors and my enslaved ancestors, both sides of the family, and they all have just been open and kind and loving and accepting, and that's what this is all about. It's about bringing people together, and especially bringing families together. So good luck in your hunting and searching, and I hope it's very fulfilling and rewarding to you also.
The turpentine industry in Cumberland County, North Carolina historically played a significant role in the region's economy. Turpentine, a resin obtained from pine trees, was a crucial ingredient in various products such as varnishes, paints, and medicines. John Sober McLean, who enslaved Jenny, was also involved in the turpentine. Many of the descendants of Joe and Jenny worked on these turpentine farms, laboring in pine forests, which provided an abundant source of raw materials for turpentine production.
North Carolina started our first town in 1705 with Bath over the abundance of the pine trees that were on this area, North, South Carolina, Georgia, 90 million acres from Virginia to Texas. When they came over here, they were building ships. Sweden was out of product, and North America had all those 90 million longleaf pine trees. And so the original reason for starting on the coast of North Carolina was create tar, pitch, and turpentine to build ships with. Tar is liquid, as you can see. That's tar. Pitch is cooked down into a solid product that's used to seal up ships with. All this came from North Carolina pine trees, 1705. They came over here, got started because we had dead pine tree hearts laying everywhere over thousands of years. And these dead tree hearts contain that oleo resin that you cook out the product side of. So slaves included, and as well as the poor whites that came with them, would drag up these tree hearts that have been dead for some of them 1,000 years, but they don't rot because they're full of the type product that makes tar and pitch. They would pick a sloping ground. The slaves would work sometimes 4 days digging out these holes on sloping ground with ditches in them. Then they would work and drag up all these dead pine tree hearts, load them in this mound, cover it with dirt, set it afire, and after 9 days, it would run out 100 barrels of pine tar, like I showed you, this liquid, which they would dip out of a barrel at the end into other barrels, and they would sell it back to England to build ships with, and water, seal up the water, out of the water. Later on in years, we called tree hearts fat lightwood because we used it to start our fires with in our chimneys and stoves because it had that resin inside of it which makes it flammable. The mound would look something similar to this after they covered it over the pine tree hearts that were in it. It would take them 2 days to dig that big hole. Take them 2 days to load it full of pine tree hearts, and then 2 days to cover it over and cover it up before they'd go up there and set fire to it. And now they're going to sit in these woods and camp out beside of this for 9 days as it cooks out that pine tar out of those tree hearts. So they would literally camp in the woods and live in lean-tos, tents, and live in the wilderness while they were doing this. And here's some tree heart we've cut up, and we cook our tar by slicing it up, putting it in a pot, turning it upside down over a funnel, building a fire on it. But that mound would take 9 days to give you 132-gallon barrels of tar. After that's over with, the slaves would have to dig the mound back open and remove the charcoal, because what you're actually doing is making charcoal, and the runoff was pine tar. And they used a lot of the pitch. When you cook your pine tar down to half its weight, it turns into a solid that they used in their fence posts and stuff in the ground when they were doing that kind of work.
In the 1840 will of Alexander McLean, Joe, Stephen, Celia, Charity, Sandy, and Esther, some of the siblings of Joe or Jenny, were distributed to unknown people. Jenny, at around 15 years old, encountered Joe, also enslaved, and together they bore 14 children. Most of her children went in the name of McNeil because they were passed down and sold to the Archibald McNeil family in Barbecue, Cumberland County, North Carolina. Sarah McNeil, born around 1800, married Sherd McNeil. From this union 14 children were born. Elizabeth, child of Sarah and Sherd, was born around 1815 and she died around 1909. She was found on the Hector McNeil plantation in his 1853 slave inventory. She married Daniel J. Harrington. From this union 15 children were born. This family lived in the Upper Little River Township of Harnett County, North Carolina.
My name is Rayfield Newton. I am the son of Marcella Newton and Prue Newton Jr. Marcella is the daughter of Joe Jordan and Marcella Harrington. Marcella Jordan is the daughter of Jack Harrington and Amy Johnson. Jack Harrington is the son of Daniel J. Harrington and Elizabeth McNeil. Elizabeth is the daughter of Sharon and Sarah McNeil. Sarah is the daughter of Jenny and Joe McLean.
Diana McNeil, child of Sarah and Sherd, was born around 1817. She was found being hired out from Dr. Hector McNeil to Alexander McMillan in 1841. She married Henry B. McLean. From this union 3 children were born. This family lived in the Shawtown community of Harnett County, North Carolina.
Hello, I am Angela J. Poole of Concord, North Carolina. I am a descendant of Joe and Jenny McLean through their daughter, Sarah McLean McNeil. Diana McNeil, the daughter of Sherd and Sarah McNeil, married Henry B. McLean and became the parents of Sandy McLean, who is my great-great-great-grandfather.
William Billy McNeil, child of Sarah and Sherd, was born around 1819. He was on the 1853 inventory of Hector McNeil. He married Amy. From this union 16 children were born. This family lived in the Beaver Dam and Riverside townships of Harnett County, North Carolina. Jane McNeil, child of Sarah and Sherd, was born around 1820 and never married. She had 2 children, one child by Wiley Holder and one by an unknown father. Jane migrated to Turnback, Lawrence County, Missouri with enslaver Neil McNeil around 1840. At 15 years old, Nelson fled the McNeil farm in Turnback, Missouri, crossing into Kansas. Nelson later connected with Colonel John Ritchie, an abolitionist running the Underground Railroad in Topeka, Kansas, assisting numerous slaves in achieving freedom.
My 3rd great-grandfather, Nelson Holder Ritchie, was a slave, and his mother, Jane McNeil, was a slave in Harnett County, North Carolina. And she was bought by a man by the name of Neil McNeil and taken to Lawrence County, Missouri when she was 9 months pregnant with my grandfather. She gave birth to Nelson and then she died shortly thereafter. Jane's mother and father were Sarah and Sherd McNeil, and they were enslaved in North Carolina, in Harnett County also. And then Sarah's parents were Jenny and Joe McLean, and they were also enslaved in Harnett County, North Carolina.
In 1870, at the age of 29, Nelson married Mary Samantha Matthews Fulbright, a young mulatto woman, in Topeka, Kansas. Mary, aged 22, was believed to be the daughter of William D. Fulbright, her former slave owner from Springfield, Missouri. From this union 1 child was born. Sometime in 1876, after the death of his first wife Samantha, Nelson traveled to Zion Valley, Kansas, on business, and while there met a beautiful young woman by the name of Annie Cowan Russell, daughter of James Russell and Elizabeth Householder. From this union 12 children were born. Nelson's burial took place in Bountiful, Utah Cemetery, where Annie, his wife, lived for 37 years after his passing, raising their children alone. Annie spent her final years with her daughters, Bessie and Grace, until her death on March 22, 1950, at 93 years old, and was laid to rest beside Nelson. The struggles and hardships endured by Annie, Nelson, and their family are difficult to fathom. Nelson Holder Ritchie's descendants take pride in their heritage and admire the courage he displayed while navigating the hardships of slavery, his collaborating with Colonel Ritchie, and forging his path as an entrepreneur. John, Sherd, and Hugh McNeil are the children of Sarah and Sherd McNeil. They are the grandchildren of Jenny and Joe McLean. John McNeil's birth is estimated around 1852, with no further available information. Sherd McNeil, born around 1845, passed away on July 21, 1928, in Lillington, Harnett County, North Carolina. He was married to Martha Cavington, and they had 12 children, most of whom reside in the Norrington community in Lillington. Sherd is interred at the Norrington AME Zion Church in Lillington. Hugh McNeil, born around 1861, has no recorded death date. He married Laura Purcell, and they had 3 children, Willie B., Walter, and Carrie McNeil, all born in Maxton, Robeson County, North Carolina. This lineage has maintained a tradition of hosting a family reunion annually for over 50 years.
My name is James Bridges Jr., and I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I have the honor and the privilege to serve as the current president of the Willie B. and Maggie Fairley McNeil Family Reunion. This year we'll celebrate our 62nd consecutive family reunion in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. As direct descendants of Joe and Jenny McLean, We are one of the many branches of the McNeil family. Sarah McNeil, my fourth great-grandmother, was the first child of 13 born to Joe and Jenny. Sarah and my fourth great-grandfather, Sherrod McNeil, had 13 children also. One of the 13 children was my third great-grandfather, Gabriel McNeil. Gabriel and Caroline McLean were the parents of my second great-grandfather, Hugh McNeil. Hugh was born in 1861, right before the end of slavery in 1865. He married my second great-grandmother, Laura Purcell, and that union produced 3 children, one of which was my great-grandfather, William, or as we know him, Willie B. McNeil. Willie B. and my great-grandmother, Maggie Fairley McNeil, married in Robertson County, and that union produced 10 children: James Cleveland, Willie B., John, Maggie, Lily, Sarah Jane, Palma Lee, Annie Bell, Estella, and my grandmother, Mary Letha McNeil Bridges. And that became what we consider the first generation or the foundation of our branch of the McNeil family. From the parents of Joe and Jenny McLean, who were enslaved people of EGBO lineage from the area now known as Nigeria, we are 10 generations in this country, 6 generations removed from the cruelty of slavery, and still we rise.
Unknown male, child of Sarah and Sherrod, was born around 1822 and married Maria McNeil from the Archibald McNeil plantation in Lillington. From this union 14 children were born. This family lived in the Riverside community of Harnett County, North Carolina. Gabriel McNeil, child of Sarah and Sherrod, was born around 1823 and he married Caroline McLean. From this union 12 children were born. This family lived in the Norrington community of Lillington, Harnett County, North Carolina. Gabriel was later sold to Alabama around 1863 and later migrated to Escambia County, Florida around 1870. He was remarried in Florida and had 6 more children. And his last name was changed to Backus. Stephen McNeil, child of Sarah and Sherrod, was born around 1823. He was listed on the 1853 Woolen Inventory of Hector McNeil. He married as Charlotte. From this union 10 children were born. Most of his descendants live around the Riverside community in Irwin, Harnett County, North Carolina. Charles McNeil, child of Sarah and Sherrod, was born around 1826. He is listed on the 1854 will of John Red McNeil. He married Jeanette McCoy. From this union 13 children were born. This family lived around the Norrington community in Lillington, Harnett County, North Carolina. Letty McNeil, child of Sarah and Sherrod, was born around 1830. She was on the 1838 will of Hugh and Sarah McDougall to John McNeil at the age of 11. She married John McLean. From this union 12 children were born. This family lived in the Bunlaville Township of Harnett County, North Carolina.
Hi, I'm Maritha Clark, and I have been asked to share with you how my DNA connects with our shared ancestors, Jenny and Joe. I'm the daughter of Letty Wiltress McLean. She is the daughter of Charles Frederick McLean. He is the son of Letty McNeil. Letty McNeil is the daughter of Sarah McNeil, and Sarah is the eldest of Jenny and Joe's children. And it is my pleasure to be a part of us all coming together after being apart for so long.
Cherry McNeil, child of Sarah and Sherrod, was born around 1832. She is listed in the 1854 inventory being hired out to Jeanette McNeil. She was later sold to the Proctor family in Wilson County, North Carolina. She married Abraham Armstrong. From this union 6 children were born. Some of the Armstrong descendants migrated to Lono County, Arkansas after 1880. Hannah McNeil, child of Sarah and Sherrod, was born around 1833. She married Isaac Cofield from the Zachariah Cofield plantation in Harnett County, NC. From this union 3 children were born. This family lived around the Kipling Township in Harnett County, North Carolina. Dolly McNeil, child of Sarah and Sherrod, was born around 1835. She married John L. Nelson and was sold to Tennessee and later migrated to Pulaski County, Arkansas. From this union 10 children were born.
I am Gwendolyn Diane Nelson. I am a descendant of Joe and Jenny McLean through their daughter, Sarah, and her husband, Sherrod McNeil. My great-grandmother, Dolly McNeil, was born. She married Reverend John Nelson. It is believed that she met Reverend John Nelson in Tennessee in the early 1850s and migrated to Arkansas, possibly Hempstead County. It is exciting that Ancestry.com enables me to contact the research team of Desi Campbell and Dina Hill, who have done extensive work on the McNeil family. I refer to his books to check family lines all the time.
Sophia McNeil, child of Sarah and Sherrod, was born around 1840. She was listed on the Effie Clark 1846 will and was deeded to John McNeil and John McLean. She married Americus Austin. From this union 4 children were born. This family lived in Moore County, North Carolina.
Hello, my name is the Reverend E. Regis Bunch, the senior pastor of the Fifth Christian Church Disciples of Christ in Cleveland, Ohio. I am related to Jenny and Joe McLean. Jenny and Joe are my 4th great-grandparents. My father, the late Milton Lee Bunch, born in February of 1940, passed away in August of 1989, is the son of Alexander Muse, who was born at the turn of the 20th century and also perished in an accident in 1940, the same year of my father's birth. And then Alexander Muse is the son of Patsy Austin. And Patsy Austin is the daughter of Sophie McNeil. Sophie McNeil is the daughter of Sarah McLean. Sarah McLean is the daughter of Joe and Jenny McLean. There you have it, the 4 generations of my link to Jenny and Joe McLean. I'm also appreciative of this documentary because I get to see and make sense of a history that was never meant to be told, never meant to be known, a history that was considered by a dominant white supremacist narrative, never meant to emerge above the ashes of colonialization. But I am spiritually proud that God can still resurrect things that were hidden and never meant to be discovered. I thank God for the brilliant and just powerful calling upon Desi Campbell's life to make it even a part of his vocation, or if probably his entire vocation. I know he's a great musician and a man of God, but I feel a spiritualness around his ability to connect us to who we are and where we came from. So this is an opportunity to not only embrace a history, but to embrace a spiritual event that God can still resurrect things that were never meant to be told. I thank God for the life of Jenny McLean, one of my earliest ancestors that I now know, who was one of the first descendants of my Nigerian people who landed here through enslavement. And so through this history telling, who knows what I'll feel? Who knows what testimonies I'll hear? Who knows will also emerge and come out of this moment? I'm excited for God to move in this moment as we hear a very important story of how we made it over. Thank you, and God bless you.
Sarah was on the Neal McNeil plantation along with two of her siblings Bet and Judah and was willed to Hector McLean in 1812. In 1822, several of Sarah's children, siblings and other relatives were on the inventory list of Archibald McNeil. Dorothy, Jack, Sharper, Dolly, Jude, Young Joe, Sherry, Sandy, Old Joe, Stephen, Celia, Joe, Young George, Mary Ann, Jacob, Jenny, George, Lucy, Neil, Jean, Caroline, Margaret, Eliza, John Robert, Jude, and Peggy. No records have been found on Sherd, however the name Sherd was passed down through several generations within this family line. In 1841, some of Sarah's children were in the will of Mary McNeil, who was the sister of Archibald McNeil. Sarah, Will, Letty, Amy, Emery, Old Bet. Finally, Sarah was found living with her son Charles in the 1880 Harnett County census in the Upper Little River Township at the age of 80 years old. Beth McNeil, daughter of Joe and Jenny McLean, was born around 1805 and no death date was found on her. She married an unknown Smith, and to this union 5 children were born. No further information was found on this family. Celia McNeil, daughter of Joe and Jenny McLean, was born around 1808 and no death date was found on her. She married Jack McLean. To this union 6 children were born. Some of the descendants of this family migrated to southern Wake County and the others lived in Mount Pisgah area in Irwin. Judah McNeil, daughter of Joe and Jenny McLean, was born around 1807 and she died after 1900. She married Cyrus McLean. According to the 1900 census, she had 9 children and 2 children still living. We are only able to locate one of her children and recently may have found a few more. Judah is buried in the Lillington Star Reformed Free Will Baptist Church in Shawtown, along with some of her descendants. Judah's son Cyrus is also buried in the same cemetery. He lived to the tender age of 96. Tempe Jane McNeil, daughter of Joe and Jenny McLean, was born around 1808 and no death date was found on her. She married Isaac Murchison. From this union 7 children were born. This family lived in the Cedar Grove community in Lillington, North Carolina, and the Flat Branch Township also of Lillington, North Carolina. Tempe was found on the 1850 to 1854 court case papers of deceased enslaver John Red McNeil. Lily McNeil, daughter of Joe and Jenny McLean, was born around 1809 and she died sometime after 1870. She was sold to Neal McNeil and migrated to Lawrence County, Missouri. Most of these descendants live in Wichita County, Kansas. Lily was found on the 1826 inventory of Nancy McNeil, the wife of Archibald McNeil. Millie McLean, daughter of Joe and Jenny, was born around 1810 and she died around 1912. She married George McDougald. To this union 11 children were born. Most of these descendants lived in the Barbecue and Broadway townships of Harnett County. Millie was found on the 1830 will of Catherine McLean given her to Margaret McLean. John Robert McNeil, son of Joe and Jenny McLean, was born around 1812. He met an unknown slave on the Ferguson plantation and to this union 1 child was born. Peter Ferguson. He later met Phoebe Williams and to this union 12 children were born. Some of the descendants lived in the Riverside community in Irwin. John Robert was found on the John Red McNeil, deceased enslaver 1850 to 1854 court case papers. Lucy McNeil, daughter of Joe and Jenny, was born around 1815 and she died after 1880. She was found on the 1821 will of Archibald McLean given her to his son Alexander and Peter McLean. Sometime shortly after that she was sold to Wayne County, Mississippi. She married Richard Chapman of Chesterfield, South Carolina, who was enslaved by William Chapman's family and migrated to Wayne County, Mississippi. In the 1870 census, Lucy is listed in Wayne County, Mississippi along with her husband Richard and several children. From this union 11 children were born.
Hello, my name is Shirley Everett Deco and I am a descendant from a slave named Jenny. I had recently taken a DNA test from Ancestry.com. I got the results, and then I contacted Desi Campbell on Ancestry because my results said that I matched 4 people whose accounts that he managed. So I called. So I sent Desi a message and went to bed. Desi called me it was early in the morning, and we got to laughing, we got to exploring and trying to find the connections to Jenny. And we were successful. We found some connections through the McDougals, through the Chapmans, and through the Richies to a slave named Jenny. So it just so happened that my sister, her name is Helen, was visiting my niece who lives in Smithfield, North Carolina. And she was visiting, so I quickly hooked up a 3-way, and they got to talking. They made arrangements. They ended up going to church the next day with Desi, and found out that Desi was hosting a one-of-a-kind DNA family reunion. And so, to make a long story short, it was going to be in June, a couple of weeks from when I first talked to Desi. So, to make a long story short, I went, I met Desi and about 100 other descendants of a slave named Jenny, and met family members who actually lived in Barbecue, North Carolina, and they agreed to take me on a tour. And so I got to drive on on Barbecue Road, and we went to Barbecue Church, and there was a cemetery next door, and it was just amazing that here was my family is celebrating its 50th anniversary. That year was the 2023, and here I was where my ancestors had lived, worked on the field, were enslaved in a town called Barbecue. Now, the name of my family's business is Everett and Jones Barbecue. So y'all can't tell me nothing. Barbecue is in my DNA. Okay, smoke runs through my blood. So, I am so thrilled to be a part of Desi and his journey to discovering all our family connections. So I just know the ancestors are smiling. Way to go, Desi.
Simon McLean, son of Joe and Jenny, was born around 1815 and no death date was found on him. He married Montan McDougald. From this union 5 children were born. This family lived in the Barbecue and Broadway Township. Some of the descendants are the Searles family that live in Bunloville community. Simon was found on the 1845 will of John McNeil given him to his son John McNeil. Joe McLean, son of Joe and Jenny, was born around 1816 and he died sometime before 1900. He married Rachel McCormick. She was born in June of 1833 and she died May 24, 1926. She is the daughter of Peter McCormick. They are both buried at the Love Grove AME Zion Church in Swan Station. Joe was found on the 1821 will of Archibald McLean being given to his son Alexander. From the union of Joe and Rachel 13 children were born. This family started in the Upper Little River Township and they later migrated to the Broadway and Sanford, North Carolina area. George McLean, son of Joe and Jenny, was born around 1818 and he died sometime after 1880. He married Venus Smith. She is the daughter of David Smith. She was found on the Alexander McAllister 1839 will given her to Duncan McNeil and William McIntyre. From the union of George and Venus 3 children were born. This family lived in the Upper Little River Township of Harnett County. George's daughter Martha married Louis Bailey and this family lived in the Shawtown community in Lillington. James or Jim was born in 1819 and he died sometime after 1870. He married Hannah Bailey. From this union 5 children were born. He was sold from David Clark with a bid of $500 by N. Clark and Effie Clark in 1830. He was later found on the John McNeil Negro hire in 1854. Sharper McNeil, son of Joe and Jenny, was born around 1820 and he died around 1898. He met Charlotte Walker and one child was born Balaam J. Walker. Sharper later married Zilphia Ray. From this union 9 children were born. John McNeil's will of 1850 listed Zilphia Sharper given to Allen McLean by his father Archibald McLean in 1820. There are over 300 DNA matches to Joe and Jenny McLean. There are 106 matches from Sarah, 67 matches to Elizabeth, 8 matches to Celia, 7 matches to John Robert, 10 matches to Tempe Jane, 2 matches to Lily, 5 matches to Simon, 32 matches to Millie, 9 matches to Joe, 4 matches to George, 4 matches to James, 2 matches to Sharper and several hundred other unknown matches.
There were many plantations throughout Cumberland County. We were able to capture a few of them that enslaved Joe and Jenny and many of their descendants. The William D. Harrington plantation site is located off of Mount Pisgah Church Road on Harrington Road in the Upper Little River Township. William enslaved Daniel J. Harrington, the husband of Elizabeth McNeil, and their descendants. Hector McNeil, the grandson of Archibald McNeil, the original enslaver of most of Joe and Jenny's children plantation, was located off of Highway 27 near Norrington, the African-American community in which many descendants of Joe and Jenny still reside. We have uncovered the grave site of Hector McNeil, the enslaver, and the enslaved Charles McNeil, and believed Charles' mother, Sarah McNeil, and maybe even Jenny and other relatives are also buried in the same area. Enslaver John Red McNeil, the son of Archibald McNeil and the brother to Hector McNeil, owned a very large plantation in the Linden-Bunlevel area of what is now Harnett County, located between Will Lucas Road to Walker Road and down Wire Road. The McDougald plantation was located on McDougald Road in the Upper Little River Township. This plantation was owned by Daniel J. McDougald and enslaved George McDougald, the husband of Joe and Jenny's daughter Millie McDougald, and some of their descendants.
A moment to acknowledge the resilience of our ancestors is essential. Despite facing immense challenges such as the transatlantic slave trade, family separation, years of enslavement, the Jim Crow era, and the Civil Rights Movement, they demonstrated remarkable perseverance. Their strength and determination serves as a source of pride and inspiration. Jenny McLean, born into slavery around 1785 in Virginia, to parents from Igbo land in Nigeria, and later sold to Cumberland County, North Carolina, embodies this resilience. Reflecting on her experiences allows us to recognize the struggles of our ancestors and celebrate their enduring legacy. Her story mirrors the strength and resilience of those who navigated through the darkest periods of history. Through the medium of music, we will honor our fifth great-grandmother, Jenny McLean, and the legacy she bestowed upon her descendants.
In the heart of EGBO land, traditions hold sway. I gaze upon the sky, hoping to find my way. I journey from coast to coast, through trials you try. Descendants standing tall, proud in the grace of God. You are my strength. You are my guiding light. You are my hero in the darkest night. You're the hope for my source. Through trials anew, you shape generations by the resilience of you. Taken from kindred land, a fate so hard to bear. Slaves at rules, yet rising from despair. You are my strength. You are